The ocean, the atmosphere, the ice, the land, they all interact. This is this big complex machine that we're trying to understand. My name is Severine Fournier, and I'm observing our changing oceans from space. Specifically, I use measurements of the height of the ocean, the temperature and the salinity of the ocean
to better understand how the ocean is moving and how the currents are changing in time.
Thanks to satellites, we can have this big picture.
So this is the Sentinel-6 satellite.
The Sentinel-6 is going to measure the height of the ocean. So we've been measuring the height of the ocean since the beginning of the 90s, and Sentinel-6 is going to allow us to continue that record.
The satellite is actually emitting a signal.
And by measuring the time that it takes for the signal to bounce back to the satellite, this is going to give us the measurement of the height of the ocean.
So the satellite is going all over the globe in about 10 days. We can use these data to monitor either the sea level rise or El Niño events.
It doesn't matter where you live, everyone is impacted by the ocean. The Earth in general is very fascinating, trying to understand how the Earth system works. And also, hopefully, if my work can have an impact on the environment, the ecosystems, and people's lives, that's also a big motivation for me. So I grew up in France, and I did all my studies in France. I mean, science is international, so scientists around the world are using this data to help people from space. It's just one planet.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Marina Jurica with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Southern California. You may know NASA best for exploring other planets, but we are also keeping a close eye on our own planet Earth. NASA is about to launch the U.S. and European Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich satellite. This satellite aims to collect the most accurate data yet on sea level and how it changes over time. JPL manages the Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich mission for NASA. NASA JPL oceanographer Severine Fournier is a scientist on this mission who will be observing the data that comes down and continues to analyze sea level changes and the impact to each and every one of us who live here on Earth. She joins us live today to answer some of your questions. If you have any questions you'd like to ask, you can leave them right here in the comments or post them to social media with the hashtag #SeeingTheSeas. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Severine.
Hi, Marina. I'm happy to be here and happy to answer some questions.
Great. So let's get started. You are really excited that Sentinel-6 will continue in gathering this data on our oceans for another 10 years. Why is it so important to have that continuity?
So I think what is very exciting and important about Sentinel-6, it's really the continuation of the measurements of sea surface height. So we've been measuring the height of the ocean for about 30 years now, since the beginning of the 90s. And Sentinel-6 is going to allow us to measure that for another 10 years. And this is really important because we're monitoring the sea level, for example. We've seen for the past decades that the sea level is rising for about 3 millimeters a year, and this trend is accelerating. And we really need to keep monitoring that trend and that acceleration. And Sentinel-6 is going to allow us to do that. But there are also other phenomena that we need to monitor, such as El Niño and hurricane intensification, for example. And Sentinel-6 will help with all that.
And adding another 10 years will also enable us to learn how we need to react in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Being prepared and forecast all that, yes, important.
You were born in France. How did you end up working at NASA? Did you always have a passion for Earth science at a young age?
Not really. But I think I've been always curious, and I was just good at math and physics, I guess. So I went to college and I studied physics. And then when it was time to choose an option, oceanography seemed interesting and different, and kind of studying the ocean seemed a bit romantic. So I picked that. And then I realized that I was really interested in the observation side of things, like especially from space. It seemed fascinating that we could study the ocean from hundreds of kilometers above the Earth. So I then studied remote sensing, and I did a PhD trying to combine these two. So I did oceanography by using satellite data, I studied like river plumes and how they are impacting the freshwater discharge from the rivers, how it's impacting the coastal ocean using satellite data. And during my PhD, I was working with researchers from different countries, especially the US. And so I wanted to go abroad and live somewhere else and have another experience. So I got a fellowship to come work at NASA, JPL, for a couple of years. And after that, I stayed because I find JPL to be a very fascinating place to work at. And it's very unique because I can do science and at the same time being involved in satellite missions from the ground up, like Sentinel-6.
That is amazing. It offers you the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Now, you're going to take this data, Severine, from Sentinel-6 and help scientists across the globe use it to learn about sea level and the changes that are happening. What do you find most rewarding about the work that you do?
So I really like what I do because it's very interesting. So trying to understand how the Earth system works, how the ocean, the atmosphere, the land, the ice, they all interact together. It's fascinating, and there is so much more to discover. It's really exciting. And I hope that my work also can have an impact on people's life, and that is the most rewarding thing for me.
Wonderful. Well, now we're going to go to some social media questions. And related to that, Tina on Facebook asks, what are the consequences of rising seas? Is it a natural phenomenon?
So there are already consequences of a sea level rise, especially for the coastal communities, and there are a lot of people living on the coast. So seas are kind of threatening everything that is built on the coast, including businesses and people's house. But also even further inland, there are people that are going to be impacted by that because during, like, for example, hurricanes and storms, water is reaching more and more inland, and people are going to see flooding events when decades ago there were no water coming in during storms. And also they're not only for humans, they're also impact on ecosystems, and there's a lot of erosion on the beach that are changing the natural habitat for many species, and also infiltration of salty water in the water reservoirs. I mean, for drinking water and even for agriculture, and all that are going to have drastic impact on people's lives everywhere, not only on directly on the coast.
Renee on Facebook, living in Savannah, Georgia, asks, how much a year are you seeing rise in the oceans? Are you seeing a bigger rise in any specific area?
Yeah, so when we say that there is about 3 millimeters rise per year, it's on average globally, but this is going to change depending on I mean, in different regions. We're going to see some places sea level is going to drop, but it's going to rise much more on other places. It can reach 10 millimeters in some places. In the Pacific Ocean, there are some islands that are going to be threatened much more because the sea level is rising much more in these regions than others. So it's not equally the same everywhere, definitely.
And Darren on Facebook asks along the same lines, what are some of the less obvious effects of rising oceans? I'm thinking about things like salination of near coastal aquifers and other freshwater sources.
Yeah, definitely. So I was saying that a little bit earlier. Yeah, so with sea level rising, there is going to be intrusion of salt water in the aquifers and in the reservoirs of drinking water. So that's going to have an impact on people even living further inland. And thinking about agriculture also, there's going to be crops that are going to be impacted by salt water when they actually cannot really deal with salt water. So agriculture can be impacted by that too. Yeah.
And Sigonus on Facebook asks a question in French. So I will ask the question as well in English. And if you could answer both, Severine, that would be wonderful. A-t-on vraiment mesuré une élévation du niveau de la mer ou bien n'est-ce qu'une prévision? followed by, here we have truly measured a rise in sea level. Is this accurate or is it just a forecast?
Donc oui, on a vraiment mesuré une augmentation du niveau de la mer. Quand on dit qu'il y a une moyenne de 3 mm par an, donc ça a été vraiment mesuré par satellite dans les 25 ans qui ont précédé. Donc ça, c'est vraiment une mesure. On a vu cette tendance s'accélérer dans les 5 dernières années, à peu près 5 mm par an. Donc après, on prédit que ça va continuer à s'accélérer ou que ça va continuer à augmenter le niveau de la mer. Mais on a vraiment des données qui nous disent que au moins par satellite, pendant les 30 dernières années, le niveau de la mer a vraiment augmenté, oui. And in English, so yes, we've really measured an increase in the sea level, a rise in the sea level for the past almost 30 years now from satellite. This trend of 3 millimeters per year is real and has been measured, and we've even seen an acceleration recently in the 5 last years, and we are predicting that this trend is going to continue and might accelerate even more. We don't know that, so we need Sentinel-6 for that. But the data shows that yes, we've seen a rise in sea level.
And this is the first ESA-NASA joint Earth science mission, proving your comment that science is truly international. How do you feel about this world science collaboration?
Yeah, so I think that in science, international collaboration is just how it should be. There should be no other interest but the human aspect interest. And actually, Sentinel-6 is a great example for that. And missions that were there previously in altimetry. Since Topex Poseidon launched in 1992. It was a collaboration starting between France and the US with Topex Poseidon, and then Jason 1, 2, and 3. It became a collaboration between the US and Europe. So it's been 30 years that we are collaborating internationally, and it's successful. It works, and this is how it's supposed to be. Yeah.
Well, we all live on this planet and we have to all protect our oceans. And that is a wonderful way to look at it. And I'm so glad that everyone was able to come together for this mission, Severine. Back to our Facebook questions. Andrew is asking, what is the biggest discovery about our oceans in the past 10 years? And I'm sorry, it's Andre.
Oh, wow. That's a big question. I'm not sure. There's so much there's so much about the oceans. Either it's in the physics of the ocean or in biology. I would say sea level rise is actually, it hasn't been discovered in the past 10 years, but it's something that is really affecting people like right now. I don't know if that's a very broad question. I don't really know. We've monitored El Nino. So recently we had a big El Nino. We learned a lot more about this event. Our coastal oceans. We are learning things every day, and there is so much to say about that.
Yeah, and you mentioned that sea surface height helps us better understand how and when global patterns like El Nino and La Nina will happen. What are those patterns, and how will Sentinel-6 help forecast them more efficiently?
Yeah, so to simplify that, so normally in the Pacific Ocean, there are winds blowing towards the west, so towards Asia. It kind of pushes warm waters against the coast of Australia and Indonesia. So you have these waters piling up there. And during an El Nino event, the winds are going to weaken. So these waters are not pushed anymore. These warm waters are going to move along the equator towards South America and Central America. And once these warm waters reach the coast of South America and Central America, they're going to have interactions with the atmosphere. And it's going to cause a lot of precipitation, for example, in these regions, leading to devastating flooding events. It's also going to have an impact on fisheries in the coastal ocean. I mean, these warm waters are going to change the conditions for fish. On the other side of the Pacific Ocean, now we have cold waters there. And the dry air is going to cause droughts in Australia and in Indonesia. that can have an impact on water resources, on wildfires. And beyond that, El Nino has an impact on the weather in other regions of the world, even in Africa. So Sentinel-6 can really help with all that, because when the waters of the ocean are warming up, the oceans tend to expand. So the height of the ocean is gonna increase. So Sentinel-6 can see that. And these waters that are moving along the equator for months before reaching the coast of South America, Sentinel-6 will be able to track these waters. And because it's months in advance that this transport of water is happening, we can actually prepare and plan, and Sentinel-6 can be really useful for that, to prepare to all the devastating consequences of an El Nino event.
And Severine, I know we've talked about this many times. It's so important to have that lead time for organizations like NOAA and the National Weather Service, so that they're able to get those warnings out earlier to the people who live in those areas.
Yeah, definitely, to be prepared. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, Sarah Sharkey on Facebook asks, how accurate will this mission be?
Along the track of the satellite, so the satellite is measuring sea level along the tracks when he goes around the globe. So the accuracy is about a centimeter. But then when we average this data over a few days over the globe, then we're gonna have a millimeter of accuracy. So that's why we can actually predict this. We can actually see these 3 millimeters per year on average over the globe. And actually, Sentinel-6 is compared to the previous missions, we are expecting an increase in the accuracy compared to JASON-3.
John on Facebook asks, are the sea levels really rising, or are land masses sinking?
No, sea level is really rising. So the main cause for that is the warming of the ocean. So as I was explaining, when the waters are warming, the ocean tends to expand. So the volume of the ocean increases. So the height of the ocean is going to increase. And there is also another cause, which comes from a glacier and ice sheets that are melting. So they're just adding more water to the ocean. So the volume also is going to increase, and the height of the ocean is going to increase. There are some definitely regions of the world where the land is sinking due to, for example, pumping of water from the groundwater from the reservoirs. We definitely see that. But the sea level is really rising, and that's a significant phenomena. Yeah.
Yes. And Leslie on Facebook asks, how much improvement are you going to see in your work with the launch of Sentinel-6 versus the existing satellites that are already there?
So actually, I'm personally very excited about Sentinel-6 because most of my work is in coastal oceans. And until now, JASON-3 and JASON-2 and JASON-1, we had measurements on the coast. Some people were kind of trying to improve the data along the coast, but it was designed mostly for the open ocean. And Sentinel-6, we are expecting a real increase in accuracy in the measurements of sea surface height along the coast. So for me personally, that's very exciting. Yeah.
It is very exciting. And Sarah on Facebook asks, will there be a way to see topographic maps of the areas with the predicted ocean's encroachment?
I am not sure. I am not sure.
Okay, yeah. We'll get that question answered later for you. And also, Leslie on Facebook asks, how much improvement are you, Peter on Facebook asks, is the data open to researchers for free? And then in a related question, Udaya on Facebook asks, will the data be available in the public domain for analysis under citizen science?
So yeah, actually the science, say it's international, it's supposed to be free, it's for everyone. The data are always freely available for all scientists, but anyone can go on the data archive websites and download the data and look at the data. It's not restricted, and it shouldn't be. So yeah, anyone can have a look at data. Yeah.
And I know we've talked about this before too, Severine, how your job can have such an impact on such a wide variety of people and people's lives, and how you enjoy seeing that interaction.
Yeah, definitely. Talking with the public about science, about the data, that's really fascinating, because actually the goal of what we're doing is to improve people's lives. So.
Now, Stu on YouTube asks, can you please discuss the software that you use in your analysis?
Okay, good question. So I'm using a language called Python. So with that, it's an open source software, so it's freely available to anyone, and it just helped me to, for example, open the data, the files on my computer, and do some statistics on these files. Look at the data, compute like means or standard deviations or any statistics on the data to have the information that I'm looking for. So I do all that, yeah, on the computer using Python. But many people are using other softwares like MATLAB or IDL, R, Fortran, C. Yeah, you can use all that.
And also you talk about how Mars is even making us become more aware of our own Earth. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So we are actually studying also Mars and Venus, for example, to learn more about the Earth, because they were formed from, at the same time, a long time ago, and they evolved in different ways. So there are lots of similarities between these planets, but there are also lots of differences, especially in the atmosphere. Mars is very cold and have a very thin atmosphere. Venus has a very dense atmosphere and very warm. And by learning more about these planets, we can actually learn about the Earth, the past of the Earth, and most importantly, the future of the Earth.
And that's really important. It's really interesting how we can use that as a blueprint for how it all started for us.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, Christina on YouTube asks, how would you encourage young girls and women to start a career in science or in engineering?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I would say, first of all, we need more women in science. There are more men in science than women. And I would say that the more the women are going to get involved in science, and the more girls are going to be interested in science. So this is very important. And I would say, as an advice, is to maybe surround yourself, if you're curious about science, and just go for it, and surround yourself with other women who are scientists, whether it's in your area or not. And you can look up to them, and they can also make you see that actually you can make it, and it can give you advice. And I think I learned that more recently during my studies in college, or during my PhD. There were not a lot of women around me, and the more in my career, I try to always have mentors that are women that I can look up to, and that really helped. So that would be my advice. Yeah.
Well, that's great advice, Severine. And thank you so much for all of your questions on social media. And thank you, Severine, for joining us here today.
Thank you very much.
The Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich satellite is a true international collaboration, as you just saw. It is being jointly developed by the European Space Agency, NASA, the European Organization for the Exploration of Meteorological Satellites, EUMETSAT, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is NOAA, with funding support from the European Commission and technical support from the French space agency CNES. The Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich satellite is scheduled to launch on November 10th. So we're less than a month away and getting very excited. For the latest on the mission, please follow us at NASA Earth on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And you can watch all of the behind the spacecraft video profiles on the NASA 360 YouTube channel. We're going to be doing Q&As with Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich satellite team members on Wednesday afternoon for the next week. Next week's our last week, so make sure to follow and subscribe for those notifications. At NASA Earth Science, your home is our mission. Thank you so much for watching.